Hi, and welcome to the I Teed Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 88. What can Reading Rainbow teach us about troubleshooting? So, Reading Rainbow, if you grew up in the 80s, 90s, and somewhat in the early 2000s and early aughts, you may have been exposed to a PBS show back when PBS was actually a thing and had stuff called Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow was a show presented by LeVar Burton, who was also Geordi on Star Trek. It's an awesome show. Like it's fucking awesome. Like just considering what it does and what it did. It was basically just walking kids through books and trying to show kids how books related to real life. And it was a really decent example of how you can make reading sort of exciting, or how you can make reading a thing for kids in a world that was increasingly becoming technologically dependent. And it was showing a lot of how kids can enjoy reading and still continue to read for fun and whatnot. Now, I won't say that I had a huge impact on my childhood. It was always one of those shows that was sort of in the background, and it really wasn't one of those things that I would watch. You know, they'd show it in school, and that was always a treat because, you know, didn't have to fucking pay attention to class or anything like that. But it was simply just something. It was something to escape from. Now that I have kids and they see it, it's actually kind of cool. It's awesome. Of course, my kids love Mr. Rogers because, of course, they do. They don't like Reading Rainbow. Don't know why, but they love Mr. Rogers. So there's that. But at any rate, the whole point being that Reading Rainbow was this show to provide kids with the ability to identify reading and be able to identify characters in the book and how it relates to the real world and certain things like that. And it's an extremely useful and humble presentation of books, and because it was PBS and because it wasn't sponsored by corporations, there wasn't like any sort of hidden messages in there. There wasn't any vendor support. There wasn't any market placement of, you know, like soda cans or anything like that. It was just a show about reading, which is great. And so what's weird is that troubleshooting is extremely fucking simple. And it's to me, when you are troubleshooting a problem as an IT person, there are several or really just a myriad of ways for you as an IT professional to go about troubleshooting a problem. You know, they're dependent upon what the issue is that you're facing. You could have just a slew of tools at your disposal to try to figure out what the problem is. And sometimes this can lead you into an issue where you're trying everything you possibly can to troubleshoot a problem because you just want to really use all of these different tools. And that's not necessarily a problem, because sometimes an issue does require some special tools. But generally speaking, one of the things that you're trying, generally speaking, when you're troubleshooting a problem in IT, you should be looking at just the problem. You shouldn't be looking at everything else. You shouldn't be looking at all the additional pieces that might surround the issue. No, you should be looking at the problem and the things that it touches. What are you trying to learn? What are you trying to figure out? That sort of thing. And I bring this up because, you know, a lot of techs will start off, and this is one of the biggest gripes I have with vendor support is that one of the first things that a vendor will have you do is they'll say, "Oh, have you turned off your firewall?" Well, no, I haven't turned off my firewall because your application doesn't communicate out to the internet. Why would I turn off my firewall? What are you trying to prove? What are you trying to understand by turning off my firewall? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's fucking stupid. So, another question they'll commonly ask, did you disable your antivirus? Well, no, I didn't, but what are you trying to prove if I did? My antivirus will tell me if it's blocked something. It'll let me know. I'll get an alert. That's how these things work. What are you trying to prove? Like, I don't understand what you're trying to glean from turning off my firewall. Plus, turning things off just isn't necessarily going to work. You don't test your brakes on your car by turning it off in the middle of driving. Put it that way. Shit like that. These are not things that you do, but they seem to be really popular. And when you're troubleshooting an issue, any issue at all, it can be, I get it. You're just trying to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. And generally a firewall or an antivirus can get in the way, and that's a known factor. So you want to get those known factors out of the way. But that's not how you troubleshoot. That's really not. You don't troubleshoot just by turning random shit off and figuring out, did that work? How about now? Did this work? No, you don't do that. That's not how you troubleshoot. So your first fucking question should be, well, then how the fuck do I troubleshoot? What do I do? How would you like me to proceed? Well, this is where Reading Rainbow comes in, because it's honestly all about reading comprehension. You're trying to teach kids to read and to understand a book, both the theme, the moral of the story. You're trying to get them to understand the basics of how stories are told and what they mean. And that's important, specifically when you're doing troubleshooting, because the one fucking thing you should be checking when you're troubleshooting, the one goddamn aspect of troubleshooting that is flawless, is reading logs. The logs will tell you. What logs? I don't know, but you have to look for the logs. All of your problems will be spelled out for you in the logs somewhere, especially if your program has proper logging installed on it. But even not, there are other aspects of your computer that are logging: Windows logs, network logs, any of that. If there's a problem, figure out how to log it, and then you'll be able to troubleshoot from there. You'll be able to tell at least where the problem is coming from. And so it's one of my biggest pain points with brand new techs, because they want to use these new and unique tools to try to troubleshoot a problem, and they're doing way too much fucking work, or wanting to use this tool that was written in 1995 to troubleshoot this problem, when all they have to fucking do is look at the logs. As an example, one of the things that you'll see when you have, let's say you have an application, and let's say the application is quitting. There's no error message that pops up that tells you, hey, this application faced a problem. There's no identification that there was ever an issue. It just kills itself. Like Alt F4, like somebody pressed Alt F4 on the task or whatever. It's just gone. And so what do you do? What the fuck do you do in that situation? Well, Microsoft Windows has this really nifty log aspect of it. It's called the event viewer and system event viewer and system event logs. And there's one particular type of log in there called application. And that log will show you every instance where a process has errored out and quit. So if there is a problem with the process where it throws an error, it'll end up in the application logs. Now, that's not necessarily foolproof, because maybe it's not quitting because it's erroring out or throwing an error code. Maybe it's quitting some other way. Well, there are other ways to track that problem. There are logging applications that you can go and download. One of the free ones that you can go and get that can be part of the base operating system is called sysinternal's Process Monitor. And Process Monitor will give you every aspect of the process, show you everything that a process is attempting to do on the disk, in the registry, in memory, on files, against the internet. It'll give you everything that an application is doing. And so you can log that information. So if you can replicate a problem, you can have Procmon running in the background to show you maybe where that process is running into an issue. And so when you are troubleshooting a problem, you can go and find the logs. There's at least some way for you to find the logging information, to find this information. In Linux, you can also, tell it to output your debug data to a file. You can have it verbosely debug that data to a file. If your application has had code written in it, that'll help. If it has logging code written in it, that'll help you. And as a side note here, as a developer, if you are not including some sort of logging logging functionality to your application, you're doing it wrong. Your application should be logging the functions for you. You should be calling out the major function points of your data or of your application, of your process, out to a log file for verification that it is working appropriately. And you need to figure out how to do that with your own application. So I digress. The whole point of this is that when you're trying to troubleshoot, you should be using the tools of reading to understand exactly how and why an application is broken. And it goes beyond just staring at a screen and looking for a specific problem. It is looking for the anomalies, looking for the anomalous behavior, understanding what is normal and understanding what is not normal, and digging through and parsing that information. Some of it comes with experience. Some you won't be able to see what's normal without a specific amount of experience with what you're troubleshooting. So those of you who are coming in fresh into an environment, it can be difficult to understand that. And when you have somebody who can tell you, hey, it's this problem, ask them how you could figure it out on your own without having to just know the solution. But if you're hunting things down, you kind of just have to, some of it is just knowing what is acceptable and what is not, what is normal, what isn't. And so that's kind of key. But then knowing and being able to visualize and see what the anomalous behavior is also kind of key. Looking through a log file and understanding, hey, these lines are normal operation. These lines are normal operations. That's going to help you. But then when you're scrolling through the log file and you find, oh, here's an error message, understanding what that means, understanding what the error message is telling you, that is key. That is where you start your troubleshooting, and that is where you'll find your solution. You'll be able to go, oh, okay, I know what this error is. I know how to follow this through. I can at least Google this fucking error code and maybe it'll tell me what the problem is. Those basic things. It's amazing how many techs go through troubleshooting, hours and hours of troubleshooting, and never fucking Google an error message. If you're getting an error message, that's kind of easy. The error messages are coded to make it easy for you to understand what's going on. You should be able to go and find your solution through simply finding the error message in the log data, and then finding what that means and tracing it back. So with that being said, a lot of techs simply just want to get the answer, and that's also wrong. You don't want to get just the answer. You don't want to be told the moral of the story without having read it. Again, that's one of those things where it's like, no, you do have to read the book. I know in school it was a pain in the ass to read a book and write a book report and come up with the theme and moral of the story and provide that to a teacher. But those lessons that they were trying to teach you are also what are going to help you when you're walking through troubleshooting, because you are going to be able to understand what logs are telling you and basically come up with the idea of, hey, I know what I'm being told. I know what the system is doing. I know what the application is trying to accomplish here, and now I know how to troubleshoot the issue. So as a tech, if you are running through or running into a problem constantly and you're having issues where you're troubleshooting a problem and it's taking you forever, maybe take a step back and look at what you need to learn to troubleshoot. Like, what are the things you need to learn for you to fix the problem? And so the key pieces that you should be looking for when troubleshooting are: what is the application trying to do? How is it trying to accomplish it? Where is it making this change? Who is attempting to make the change? And what aspect of the application is failing in this process? And so if you know those pieces of information, or you can find them, you can start to craft an entire dossier on a problem. You can identify all the different pieces, and then you can go in and attempt to fix it. And so as a tech, if you are troubleshooting these things and you find those pieces of information out, it makes it really easy for you to then go, okay, I know where my start point is, I know where my endpoints are, and I know how to re-establish context in the application so that I can start troubleshooting and recreating this issue. Because recreating the issue is also a very valid or very valuable tool. It's a very valuable troubleshooting step, recreating the issue. If you can't recreate the issue, it's going to be extremely hard for you to understand how to troubleshoot. I mean, a transient problem where it only happens every now and then is really difficult to find, because if it only happens once every hour, well, fuck, that's going to be difficult to troubleshoot. If it happens only once a day, well, Jesus Christ, that's even worse, because now I have to wait 24 hours for this thing to occur again. And it can drag your troubleshooting time out further and further. So again, looking for your logs, looking at your data and trying to understand what is normal, what isn't, trying to understand the application in whole, what you're doing, what it's trying to affect, who's trying to use it, and the different aspects of the functionality are going to help you in the troubleshooting step. But again, the key aspect of troubleshooting is going to be understanding what your logs are telling you. If you first understand what your logs are telling you, then you can understand what you're going through, or what your application is attempting to do. And maybe, just maybe, you can take the next step in actually solving the problem instead of just simply troubleshooting an issue until your eyes bleed and the vendor starts yelling at you and your customer or your coworker or whoever decides that you're not worth their time. All right, guys, that's all I got time for today. I hope you have a great day.